So I'm going to call to order this governance committee meeting at 6 p.m. Mrs. Shope, could I have a roll call, please?
Megan Miller,
Present.
Spencer Anderson,
Present.
Sean Levy.
Present.
I have all members present with Spencer in the boardroom and Megan and Sean Levy virtual.
All right. I do recognize that Board Member Schneider is here, and I appreciate your attendance at the meeting. As a reminder, we do allow all board members are welcome to committee meetings that they don't serve on, and based on some of the things that we're going to be talking about this evening, Board Member Schneider, feel free to chime in because this is really just looking at some of the things that are on our agenda and trying to collect feedback in a publicly noticed session. So it gives us some directions that we need to move. That's how we'll be proceeding tonight. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Board Member Megan Miller and seconded by Board Member Spencer Anderson. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And the motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so it's been moved by Board Member Spencer Anderson and properly seconded by Board Member Megan Miller. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We'll begin with organizational items. 2A, Superintendent Search. So I guess the best way to kind of start this off is the included attachments for the meeting that were posted in board docs are our timeline, 1 and 2 that Dan Nearad, our search consultant, gave, and also his memo that we shared when we sat to do initial planning last week. Subsequently, over the last couple days from our last meeting, he has sent additional documents to board members to have input as we're continuing this work. And so he also shared with me on Monday a new timeline, a revised timeline. This came out after we'd already posted for board docs, but Michelle does have it posted to share. And so one of the things that that I would like us to do this evening as a governance committee is, one, to review the dates. We still need to make a decision as a full board about these dates to give Dan some direction in the work. And then there are a couple questions. He sent me a follow-up email, and I will be having a phone call with him on tomorrow. And I told him that after I met with board members during the governance committee, I'd have more collective input to shape the answers to the questions that he was asking. So, Michelle, can you share the document that I sent you with the revised dates, please?
Yes, I'll try to do that.
Okay. So I'll keep going in between, and then I'll take questions and solicit feedback. So also the email Dan sent to the board members, a past profile. This is the profile that was developed in 2020, like various statements of what staff and community, community and parents said that they wanted, like character traits in a new superintendent. And so one of the things that he needs us to do is determine the relevancy of that past profile, like if that should be included in our recruitment brochure. He's asked about, we did say that we wanted to have like 2 or 3 focus groups, and I think he has those scheduled for like July 13th. And he wants to know, should he use questions, or there's an activity that he suggested that's based on the last profile, but what kind of engagement do we want to have with the community at that time. Is 2 or 3 the right number of engagements? And then in this timeline that I'll go over the dates, he's listed to be determined our selection date, because we did indicate that we wanted to watch the videos, because we're conducting one part of an interview and then the community will be conducting another part of the interview, but there'll be videotape. And we did indicate in our last meeting that we wanted to watch the video to help us in our selection. So he's added some dates for that. And then ultimately with the timeline, and this will probably come up in our July 5th meeting. Like I said, it'll be in the proper place, but the 7 of us will need to decide calendar dates so that we can have all of this work planned out on our calendars, and we're all able to participate as able. We want to make sure that everyone is empowered, so you're at the table when we're setting the dates and managing the workload that it'll take for us to select the superintendent. So I'm going to follow on the document that Michelle has posted right now. So we had our planning meeting. A vacancy notice has been posted, and where he says July 13th, incorporate engagement strategies into profile, prior focus groups, prior community survey, strategic planning, school perception survey. And we will be going over some of these other documents like our strategic planning surveys, our school perception surveys. We have a number, since the last superintendent search, we do have a number of other tools where we have gotten feedback from our community. And the question was, should we just incorporate these pieces of feedback? And we definitely wanted to have the opportunity for the community to be involved, but how to make the best use of those resources that we already have to shape. And we'll discuss those with him as we get to the planning of what's going to actually take place on the 13th. But on the 13th, he has the 2 to 3 focus groups, essay questions and current district brochure posted by July 18th. Those will be questions to go along with the application that the applicants will complete. The application deadline of August 15th. A review of applications and choosing interviewees, August 22nd. And these dates are, like I said, we'll have to agree on the dates. He's just kind of revised the timeline there. So our universe of applicants would be generated, but on the 22nd, I think that's when we are going to cut down whatever that number is to 7 at the most. And then after the first round of interviews, the selection of finalists, I believe that we will be cutting down to 3. And then background and reference checks, which we discussed last time, which were conducted by board members. And then a final round of interviews on September 12th with community staff forums and input in September 12th. And then needing some time for that final selection, because we will be reviewing those things. A site visit if we desire. And Michelle, can you move the cursor down? I thought that was on my screen. And then site visit, time to negotiate the contract. Because hopefully, I guess, some there between the 12th and the 19th, we would have made contact with the finalists. Negotiate the contract, which our attorney, we're doing some pre-work on that. As it was explained, and then announcement of the new superintendent and the position start date, as we're looking at that later date in September, that, somewhere maybe before the close of September, but definitely that person starting October 1. And so that would also kind of help us shore up our timeline for our short-term interim contracted person that we may use. But then also we have that space to define our board superintendent goals and expectations. There's also a place or some time where we might look to also do our CISA 6 process with the new superintendent as part of that evaluation. So somewhere in that September, early October space is where we would end up adding that to, because the evaluation is a part of the superintendent's job expectations and bringing people on. All right. Is there any more on that, Michelle? Okay, it's the end of the page. All right. Okay. So as Dan has noted, dates will be adjusted based on initial planning meeting, and dates may also be adjusted to accommodate schedules or other needs or unforeseen circumstances. Some dates reflect completed by status, indicates dates are required for board members' attendance. Like I said, it takes that planning. Can you move back up to page 2 or 1 there? Define, okay. So that's the review of where the superintendent search. I guess I will just entertain a round of you share your thoughts or your questions.
I really like that we moved the focus groups to the week in that July 13th spot. I think Wednesday seems to be a good night for people, unless I'm looking at the calendar wrong. I think it's a Wednesday. I think it's enough notice, but I also don't think it holds up our process. Honestly, like this, nothing alarming jumps off the page. I mean, I think this is a really tight, well thought out schedule from what I can see.
I don't see anything really like alarming to me either. It still keeps us in that September to October time range or time frame to get this completed by. And I'm glad that we have that focus groups in there too.
Okay.
Oh, actually, let me just jump in with one more comment, building off of what Spencer just said. Yeah, I agree. I liked, I was a little surprised last Tuesday when we talked to Dan Nearad when we heard the September 1st deadline. I love the ambitiousness of it, but I think October 1st is totally acceptable because that would be bringing somebody in right as we're getting ready to do our budget. And that's a really great way to kind of bring all the pieces together and really onboard somebody meaningfully. I don't think it has to be September 1st. I think October 1st is fine.
Right. And then there's another part that's going to come up also, but we'll kind of address all of our work together. I don't know, board member Schneider, do you want to offer anything?
I like the timeline. It's moving quickly, but it still gives enough time in between the different parts to make sure that we're doing a good job on it. So I do like the timeline.
All right. And I'll just also add that once we get to that August time period where we have our pool of applicants, that gives us the opportunity to decide if we're going to go forward with trying to seat someone by October, or if we're going to move into a different timeline on our search. So we have that. We'll also know that. There were some questions that Dan sent me in the email. So he did send to board members profiles, like the past profile, like these are the things that people wanted out of the superintendent. Maybe you have or have not had a chance to see that. I think I'm going to send a follow-up email to the board members and ask them to reply to me individually. I meet with Dan tomorrow, but one of the things that he wanted to do is determine the relevancy of the past profile if it should be added to the recruitment brochure. And even though we did seat a candidate, as I looked at the statements, I don't think that the statements, I don't think we need to create a whole new profile of what we're looking for, because I think it's still in line. And then also with our school perception survey, there was a whole nother part that said these are the 5 things that I would tell the new superintendent. So I think there's some space in there. And when talking with Dan on tomorrow, I might just say we can use the past profile, or here are some other documents where we've received feedback from our community about what they're looking for, and that can be added. What are you all's thoughts on that?
I think
Sorry. I think the more information that we can share, the better quality applicants that may apply. As they get more information, they can give better answers. They can see what's happening, make a determination if this is where they want to apply or not.
Right, and that's another part we'll get to. Thinking about questioning strategy, and it's not like do you know what our budget is, but this is our budget situation. What would you do with it? Versus yes or no, or they can pick the number. But I've noted your feedback, Board Member Schneider, Board Member Anderson, and Board Member Miller. The profile.
I do agree that the profile hasn't I can't see it changing very much from what it was. But it can't hurt for us taking the time right now, even just to review it. That's something that we should be doing. Just to make sure that's still in line and looking to make sure that there's not any tweaks that someone could recommend for us to do to just make it just a little bit better for us.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun there.
Board Member Miller?
Sorry. Yeah, no, I really like the idea of starting from what we've done already. I agree that it can't have changed too much. And in looking over in preparation for tonight's meeting, I already see a lot of overlap between what the current, what the school perceptions data just told us like 5 minutes ago and what this profile says. I think it needs to be presented to the community in a way that summarizes those similarities and highlights kind of like, if I'm picturing like a Venn diagram in my head almost, and just like pulling from that middle piece and saying, based on what you've told us before and based on what we've heard most recently, this is the direction that we feel that we've been given by the community. And then just like get feedback, but use that as the springboard and just kind of front load people with that. Because I think people too, it's like, I think on the one hand, it's good to ask for input, but I think it's maybe frustrating if people feel like it's a waste. Like, dude, I just took this survey. Like, what are you talking? It's like, let's at least say, here's what we've got. Here's the work that we've done. Do you have additional perspective thoughts, or maybe just look for affirmation and confirmation from people? All right, cool.
Okay. So then he asked if 2 to 3 focus groups on the 13th are right, or does there need to be question? First of all, do you feel that 2 or 3 focus groups are right?
If I can just jump in really quickly, I was hoping that, and maybe this is I may have missed you saying this, if we could put together just even, I don't know if it's like an infographic, but just like a 1-page, very easy to read document that just like highlights, here's kind of the bullet points of what we're looking for. A, to have to present at these focus groups, and B, if someone is unable to attend. I like just doing it on one night, but I know we're going to hear from people, oh, I was camping, oh, I had this, or whatever, right? So like if we could throw that out into the universe, and just, I believe last time we opened up some kind of mechanism for people who weren't able to attend to provide feedback, whether it was I think it was via email, it might have been a survey, I can't remember, to be honest, but I like the idea of just like having that information in an easy to read, easy to digest format, so people can participate on the 13th. I'll be looking at the same thing. And if somebody really, 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 really wanted to be there, or maybe just didn't find out about it until like 5 minutes before it started, we could just open up like here's your, by Monday, shoot us any other thoughts via email or this Google form or whatever it is.
Okay. So do you think that 2 or 3 events, is that the right number?
Yes, I think that's plenty. I mean, I think I'm curious to hear more about, like, are these all going to be virtual? Or are we doing like an East Side, West Side, and virtual? Or what are our thoughts there?
Let me see where we at on the 13th. The focus. Let's Okay, so the focus groups, I think, as I'm looking at the calendar, these are not interviews. So that would be community members expressing, I would assume, their opinions about what they want from a district administrator. Background check, first round of interviews, 12. Oh, because then on September 12th, so, all right, maybe I'm confused now that I'm looking at this. The focus groups, I believe, would be with community members. And then it says September 12th, interviews for, was that final round of interviews? I missed, okay, the first round of interviews happened on August 29th to the 30th. So then there's a final round of interviews September 12th. And then there's the community staff forum. So Megan, the first in July 13th, that may be 2 to 3 focus groups of community members, of however we compose them. Like, as an example, maybe we have a focus group that is for our, like the Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation, because they're our convening partner and the membership. And maybe we have a focus group for parents, and maybe we have a focus group, for staff members. That, as an example, maybe 3. I think that's what that is. The focus groups are asking just the general qualities or statements they want. When we get to September 12th, I think we would have like 3 rounds of interviews of potential candidates, the finalists. And then on the backside of that, they'd also be interviewing with the community and the staff. So like one of the candidates would be with the board, one of the candidates would be with the community, the other candidate would be with the staff, and they would all rotate through. And then that is the videotape that we said that we would watch, because as a board, we would watch their staff interview and their community forum.
That makes sense. Are we on the 13th then? Are those going to be all held in person or virtually, or a mix?
The 2 to 3 on the 13th. Maybe that's something that we need to determine, and that's what I need to ask Dan Nearad, because maybe there's one during the day, one in the evening, and then one that's virtual.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I think we just need to kind of know a little bit more about the format. But yeah, thank you for that additional explanation. That clears it up for me. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you helped me see something there too. So those are the questions that I will ask Dan Nearad then about the 13th versus the 12th, and how we, September 12th, and how we get that together. Okay. Board member Anderson or Schneider, 2 to 3 focus groups. Have we just kind of talked that out? Any other thoughts or anything else to add to help me in my conversation with?
I think 2 to 3 is fine. One of my questions I was going to ask you is the same that Megan asked, is what kind of, like, how are they going to be held? Is it virtual, in person, and time framing wise when they'll be held?
All right. So I'll get answers to that question then. Board member Schneider, anything to add?
Nope, nothing to add.
Okay. All right. So then, so we understand, I'm looking at the other question, the selection date to be determined, the board watching the videos. And I think I'm summarizing from our earlier conversation, October 1, if that's when the new person comes, that's good. We're fine with that. All right. And then also then we'll just have to watch to make our calendar dates, and that'll be done. And then the last thing that I would add in the superintendent search process is just, as we discussed, trying to work our timeline to get our interim person, our summer help in space. Right now, Teresa Moratek is our designee. Dr. Kieser is still our employee. He's on vacation. And if there was a need to call him, we would call him. But there's the summer day-to-day work, the planning for the start of the school year. There are some personnel matters that Teresa is working with Rob Bukema with. These are like the handoff of some things that Dan had and a couple other things. And we're looking to get that done. We kind of studied our calendars and planning out. So targeting July 19th, if not sooner. But there's numbers of things to lay out. So that's kind of where we're at with superintendent search. Any other questions for that topic? All right. Okay, so then I would suggest I gotta get my other. What's the next item on the agenda? Because my other screen went out.
It is school safety and overview.
All right. School safety overview. There's not an attachment for 2B. I'll just kind of get us started here. You know, considering what has happened most recently in Uvalde, Texas, and then even for our own children who experienced a hard lockdown on the last day of school, you know, this is a very challenging time for parents and school districts with this issue of school safety. We know there's recent gun reform legislation that has been passed. The state of Wisconsin has a $1 million grant for the Office of School Safety for crisis situations. They're proposing 12 regional critical incident response teams, kind of like the same as the 12 CISA areas in the state. But, you know, this is a very serious issue going all the way back to Sandy Hook and those elementary children, to other acts of gun violence in our country that also were hate crimes. Black people being killed in church, Black people being killed at the grocery store, and now in Uvalde, these children, predominantly Hispanic, being killed. So we've had some, it's a hard reality to deal with this topic. And we're almost to the space that in people's minds, it might be, like I said, a hard reality, but it's not just the if question, but a when question. Even for us, you know, we had Mr. Jayon Broomfield was shot in the parking lot and then subsequently died. The shooter was not from Beloit, but from Madison. The shooter was then found in Michigan based off of the reports and the help of those people that were outside in the work of our police department. But before that happened, it took a lot to get people to volunteer the information. And like I said, it's not, as we are looking at things in our society that are happening, there's been Supreme Court decision that may make gun safety or the public health issue of people being assaulted by weapons by other people, however you want to phrase it, that schools are now a space that are under threat. And like I said, it's a hard reality, but not if, but when. One of the things that we're looking at is no matter what we do, if the gun is in the hand of someone it does not belong in, or someone who intends to do harm to our children and our schools. And we had an incident this year where we had to close schools because of the threat of violence. That puts us in a very scary place. We've heard from community members. We've also heard from the editorials in the Beloit Daily News. And there have many calls for elected leaders to harden the school. And even in hardening schools, we still can't stop someone with bad intentions from coming and executing those bad intentions upon our children and our staff. So as I'm saying this again, I'm kind of repeating this on purpose. There's some hard realities that we have to deal with, and people are focused. There's beginning to be a shift where people are focusing on not if, but when this may befall our community. It would be one of the worst days ever. And if you think about it, we see how we had to react after the shooting with Mr. Broomfield, and looking at Uvalde, the parent reaction. I do think that there's been a shift in how parents and schools are approaching these incidents. And I think we've kind of crossed a threshold where things will be different. So in these school safety plannings, there's always what about the reunification plans? And that's crisis communication and crisis planning happens, but most people are not planning all the way out to the bad thing that you don't want to happen has happened. And looking at some of the things that I saw on the TV, some of the images from Uvalde, I can imagine police officers or school personnel trying to form barricades to, orderly process children. But I can also see parents not obeying those lines anymore as they might have before because of the current events. And that's what I mean, that I feel some things have shifted in our country along that lines. So we in the district have participated in tabletop exercises before, and there are no attached items here, but this is one of the first spaces and places for us as a board to let our community know that in addition to all the other things that we've already done, like we have already approved our MOU for school resource officers to ensure the safety of our children. There have been inquiries about, well, can you get school resource officers at every building? Can you have more security officers at every building? But Mr. Ryan Turner is our safety director. He works in that area. And so from this meeting, I just wanted to put it on the radar, and I'll be working with Teresa and Michelle that as we approach August, and I've had conversation with the chief of police also, that as we approach August, we just want to go into the school year with our parents and our community informed about what our approach is to school safety and challenges that we might face in that area. So that is kind of the purpose of that topic. And I'll open up to other board members to share your concerns to help shape the things that I need to share that you feel need to be shared also.
So I'll jump in. There's a couple things, and I'm just going to repeat what I've heard because I think the group needs to hear them, and I'm not going to like advocate one way or the other. But there is, as you know, a huge concern and focus on this issue. There are a few community members who have asked repeatedly about like, have we or why haven't we considered, like metal detectors, things that like increase like, safety, like I guess just the communication out is kind of a piece. And I guess my question would be, as we're putting something together, I'm sure you're talking, I'm sure the professionals have all these concerns on their radars. Is this something where we could put some information together for people ahead of time, maybe ahead of the beginning of the school year, and then do some kind of like a listening or a feedback session like in August, so that we could get community input, as a way to get visibility on like what we currently have, what the plans are to strengthen what we currently have, and then get people's feedback so that we can gear up adequately for September and into the beginning of the school year?
I'm writing down. I hear you. Right.
Just as an aside, I mean, a bajillion years ago, I worked at Waukegan High School as part of an AmeriCorps program, and they had metal detectors there, and I have some concerns. I think it's not a terrible thought. I don't know what the cost is, but I know that there is something to be said about creating an atmosphere that feels safe and nurturing for students. And I feel like that's one of those issues that can swing either way. And that's why I think it's really important to hear from the community, because like as a parent, until it's an issue that becomes real, I'm not even sure how I feel about that. Like I feel very safe personally sending my children to school. Like I have never been concerned about my kids' safety as a parent in the school district of Beloit. Having said that, I know that that's not the only experience that there is out there. And for me, not only as a board member, but as a parent, I would find a lot of value in hearing what other parents have to say about what they and their children want to increase their feelings of like safety, security, kind of nurturing environment and support.
Okay. I've noted your concerns. And I'll bring those points up. All right. Other board members?
So I think the whole like having a listening session would probably be a really good approach to this too, just because then we can highlight some of the the stuff that we do have that we are doing. But I mean, again, there is like kind of a place where we can't show off all of it because then it's kind of doing what we don't have. Yeah, like you know what I'm getting to. But then it also allows the families to say, hey, like we're comfortable with these things, or we're not comfortable with these things, and try to find a common ground where we can make them feel safe, but yet also not to the point where it's impeding their ability to actually go to school or causing too many distractions for the students themselves. It's a very fine line. One thing I do gotta say is that I know the majority of our safety officers in Lloyd are actually retired police, so that's kind of a good thing that we have going for us, is that we do have retired officers working in our schools with kids.
Okay. All right. Do you want to add anything, Board Member Schneider?
I think we already have a lot of things in place and are continuing to add to what we're doing for security in all the buildings. I think it's something we need to always to look at and continue to grow and to do better. It would be good to listen to or to hear from people as to what their concerns are about what they think we are not doing as well as we need to, and where those what we can do to help solve those issues. But I think with our close working relationship with the SROs and the police department, that we can also seek their advice as to what they see that we can do to increase the security within our buildings.
Okay. All right. So I will take those comments and concerns so that they are properly placed with our administrators to begin that work. And I think for us, I hear a listening session in school safety, returning to school, to hear from our parents what their concerns are about their children. And
if I may, just one final thought. I think that since
dramatic pause, Megan, or okay, maybe she's going to pop back in the
bumped
meeting.
out.
Okay.
Sorry, there's that lovely internet again.
Okay.
I was just like, last little thought, since school safety exists within the microcosm of the larger community, and I know that there are at least a number of groups that I'm aware of continuing their advocacy and work for safer communities in general outside of the school. I think it might be useful if we're going to do some kind of a listening session to at least invite folks from the city to be involved, and perhaps offer them a platform to share, whether, maybe just within the lane that it's collaborative with the school district. Like Greg just mentioned, I think Spencer did too, like our already, positive collaborative working relationship with our SROs. Even though it's not necessarily like the scope of what we're doing, it might be nice to invite some people from outside of the scope of what we're doing, as long as we're clear and saying like, here's what we can do, here's what's within our scope and sphere of influence and ability to put things into effect. Here are maybe some people to speak to the larger context of that, because it might help us, it might inform us of practices that we're doing, and maybe outside of the school district, people might be informed by the types of concerns that people bring to the school district. It's just a thought. I don't know how logistically possible that is, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
President Levy?
Yes.
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
So I feel like Megan was maybe present virtually, quote unquote, a few years back when we did almost exactly what she's describing. It was done at the high school in the Barkin Arena, and we had a table set up, or two tables set up facing like the bleachers and the balcony. And we had our security staff, like our Ryan Turner person there. We had a couple of the safety security people there, SROs there, and our administrative team. And basically, we talked about everything that we do in the district for our staff, and in terms of like training and what we do in our buildings, and then the drills that we go through with the students and staff throughout the school year. And then we, the police department side or the SRO side of things talked about like their extra training that they do and things like that. And then they took questions from the audience. And I distinctly remember sitting there taking minutes because it was considered a board meeting, because our board members were there too. And they, the parents, as they were leaving, were very appreciative, because there were so many parents that said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize how many things you already did." So it's a lot like what Megan has been describing. And I know back then the parents were very appreciative, and it was probably 5 to 7 years ago that we did it.
I wasn't there, but thanks for thinking I was, because that sounds awesome.
Right. Okay. Well, I have that down, and I think that is, it kind of sounds like that is something that we're going to work with our administrators and our partners, because we do exist. The school exists inside the city. So we're not in it alone, and there's community aspect and other governmental agencies to assist us. So that is a school safety overview. Is there anything else anyone wants to add to 2B? And I thank you, Ms. Shope, for that additional insight. 2C, strategic planning. So where we're at with our strategic plan is right before our June 21st meeting. We were scheduled to have our another meeting that was going to be virtual as we were putting the final draft together. At the last in-person meeting, I met with Dr. Kieser, the executive staff of Ms. Beavers, Ms. Mortek, and Ms. Christopa. And they were tasked with going back to set a time to finish up the draft. So as a board, they were able to have more than a day turnaround in reviewing the final draft. In between that time period, we did solicit the feedback from those last design teams, and board members have had an additional opportunity to provide feedback to help in the writing of the plan. I'll be sitting with Mrs. Mortek to kind of get an update, but somewhere between the rest of July and then before August, when our staff is coming back, the plan will get presented to the board for us to approve, so that we start the school year. And our target date is August, so that we start the school year able to explain to our staff and our community that this is our plan. This is what we're focused on for the next 3 to 5 years. And so as we continue to, move forward, that there may be, this is the plan to get us to where we want to be. And one of the suggestions I would have as we continue to shape the strategic plan is maybe that with some of the items that need to be achieved in year one, as we look at those things, that those may be things that could be placed at the board level, or those or a prioritization of activities that need to happen be placed at the board level, because it's easier for the 7 of us to move and check some things off the list than it would be for different departments or school buildings or teachers and principals. That was one of the concerns that principals shared, that when I look at all this, what does that mean for me? But if we're able to give a longer runway to other parts of the district and able to, that as we plan out which things get done by what date, that some of the actions that may be necessary are board actions, and that we kind of front load those, so we spend the year working through that to give those other parts of the district a longer runway to get their parts of the plan off the ground and into work. So that will be coming to us to be finalized in late July or August, and that's our strategic plan. And I included with Dr. Kieser had left, and then board members have all seen the draft strategic plan and the strategies that go along with it. So I'm going to open that up to feedback.
Can you repeat exactly what you're looking for feedback on? Sorry.
Oh, it's just the update of where the strategic plan is at. Like to the last action that board members took is that we were asked to provide any other strategies or feedback on that draft. And between now and August, I'll say, believe the administration, those that are responsible for the work streams, are working on finishing that up, and there will be a preliminary presentation to us, and then a second one before things are finalized. But with the goal of things being finalized, I think around the time that our teachers are coming back in August, so that it can be presented to the staff that this is our direction for the next 3 to 5 years. So it's kind of just an update of where that process is at, and then just if there are questions that board members have. And then also too, as we have this meeting, it's our chance to articulate to the public where we're at on certain issues.
No, that's great. Do you know about when that preliminary kind of meeting would be? Or like when is that going to come in the middle of July kind of thing?
Yeah, from my understanding, when we were meeting at the end of May or like early part of June, that's going to happen in July, and I'll be touching base with our administrators in the central office later this week. Michelle and I are got to get something scheduled. We're working through schedule, so that's when I will hear from them.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think as long as we're kind of just like updating people and like letting them know, like, yes, this is still a work in progress. This is when the board is expected to give initial feedback as a full board. It sounds like it'll be in July. And then this is when, so we would vote. Are we voting to like approve it, or like, do we formalize it? Are you saying in early August?
Yeah, there's like a formal adoption.
Okay. I would just say as long as that all sounds fine to me. I would just like whatever mechanisms are available to us to communicate with kind of the public, that like, especially with the strategic planning team. I don't know if there's like a mass email we can put out and then maybe put an update on the website. Like strategic planning is still in progress. Like, maybe there's like a cute little progress bar, like little thing we can throw on there for folks and say, we're all excited to formalize this in the beginning of August and share out the spectacular results or something like that.
All right. Yeah, there is a dedicated space on the webpage for strategic plan. And then I hear your suggestion, just that there's the update to people, so people who have been participating understand where we're at.
Yeah, and I think especially with the transition, I know we're going to spend a lot of our focus and energy with the superintendent piece. It's really important that our stakeholders hear from us, like that we still have a pulse, because it is, like I mentioned at our last meeting, it takes a lot of energy to do a superintendent search, and it's really easy to kind of lose sight of these other pieces. But I think we just have to make sure that we're being conscious of like having those touch points with other people and other projects. And it's like, yep, things are going well. Here's who you contact with questions. Thanks again for all your time and energy. Updates coming soon, kind of thing.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah, I just say like we gotta just make sure that we're keeping everyone updated on where we're at. And honestly, like we are with the superintendent search happening. At least then, when the new superintendent comes in, now they have the goal, or as we keep hearing, it's like the North Star for our district. So it gives that superintendent that clear objective. And so it is coming together kind of, in the right time, even though we don't have that same superintendent carrying that plan through. But it gives our new one a directive and an idea of where we want to take our district.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Board Member Schneider?
No, I think everything's been covered. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Okay. So like I said, yep. And that's a reminder, Spencer, like you said, is that you're coming to Beloit. We've already spent a year doing our work and setting work up. These are the things that we need you to come help us do. So it's very clear when that person gets here. They don't have to make it up or try to figure it out. It'll already be laid out. And that's one of the spaces that, that we're trying to be with our strategic plan, because even if when we have our new administrator, there's no guarantee that that person will stay forever. But that, they're partners that are helping us move the work in Beloit, because we didn't get here overnight, and we won't be out of our situation overnight either, but that we're continuing to make progress. And so I'll make sure that that is what happens, and we'll get those, like I said, a reminder to keep people updated as we're working. All right, so I'm going to close this out on 2C. If there's nothing else that anyone else has, and I'll focus this on 2D, referenda planning. One of the things that I'm looking at in our referenda planning, there's a couple of different things. I think looking at the resource of our community survey, it gave us many pieces of insight to help us in all the work that we have. Some of the key things that I noted were suggestions that we need to improve student discipline, that we need to focus on recruiting and retaining high quality staff, and continuing to improve school safety and security. And the things that we've already covered, we're trying to recruit a superintendent. It's the summertime, so that process of staffing is ongoing. We just talked about improving school safety and security, and then improving student discipline. So those are the things that were shared with us. Also the feedback that the school board, the thought that school board is not doing what it takes to make the district successful, and that we're not headed in the right direction. Like I said, that, sometimes following a school board is like following sports. You might be following a team that's been losing, and when they get on a winning streak, they've got so many losses behind them, you're not really focused on that. But as we look at a perception, and that's what that data is, that's not surprising to us that we've heard that. But we have our recent elections where the community made decisions, and we're trying to keep that stability for our community as we engage in this work. So on slide 40 and 41, there were 5 pieces of advice for the new superintendent. Ms. Shope, can you take us to slide 40 and 41 on that document, the referenda planning?
I will certainly try.
And while she's working on that, so on slide 40 and 41, it's the 5 pieces of advice to the new superintendent that came from our staff, from our parents, and our non-parents and non-staff. And that's some of that additional feedback that we mentioned that we would pass on to Dan Nearad as he helps to create that profile for our search. And then on 51, we have the scope of our summer work, which when we asked Rob, like, what are the next things that we need to do? I didn't write them all down because I figured we would just refer to the slide. But in general, that place where we're at with the work is that now that we've conducted the survey and we have received the results, what is it that we need to do? Part of, I think, in slide 51 talks about between the operational and the capital referendum, working with our facilities manager, the architect for the master facility study, and then articulating to our community like how much money would be asked for, what it would be used for, and the projects. And that'll also kind of run us into when we start talking about budget development, our financial situation, because we have to make it clear to our community what's being asked for. Is that slide? Yep. So slide 40 and 41, top 5 items. There were commonalities that our community wants the new superintendent to engage with staff to build consensus and ensure that they feel valued and heard, to be willing to listen to various opinions, and then as a superintendent, take a position and own a final decision as they recommend things to the board or as they handle their day-to-day operations and make decisions that run the organization, that superintendent is transparent about the district's data and decision-making processes. That'll come up in another item for us in board development, and that they improve student achievement. And those 4 were common amongst our staff, our parents, and our non-parent and staff group. And then on 41, is that the next one, Ms. Schultz? The things that they all agreed did not need to take place was to participate in community events, activities, and organizations, and build relationships with local businesses and government. I think it was Board Member Miller who mentioned that since that is already taking place, the way that the people answered is that, that was not a priority, but those things are all already happening. And for a new superintendent, as Dr. Keister shared with us, that was part of his success in meeting with those different groups. But from those 2 slides, those are the feedback of our parents about what to do with the superintendent. But then if you can go down to 51. That when those questions were asked about the capital referendum and the operational referendum, or maybe it's 50, okay, 51, yeah. That what Mr. Demuse left for us in terms of what we learned, right? Go back. Maybe your number is different than mine. It's like the second to last slide. I thought that was 51. I'm sorry. Yeah, what did we learn? That slide there. So that there was a great deal of overlap between our subgroups, between our staff, the parents and caregivers, and the non-parents and non-staff regarding what's going well, what isn't, and the advice for the new superintendent and where our focus and planning and resources should be. But then as we begin to further discuss this operational or capital referendum, that the district should begin to clarify the plans so that the community members understand and have answers to the 3 questions: what projects are needed, why are those projects needed, and how much will the projects cost. And like I said, as we look toward developing our budget, those are some things that we're going to need to address our decline in enrollment, the deficit budget that we've had, and the use of those resources. So I'm listening for feedback for other things as we begin that, because some of that work, when we have our interim for the summer, there are certain things that need to happen along with that, and that person will need to give direction to the administrative team that's responsible for those areas, so that we're continuing to do that work and where we need to be, so it doesn't fall off.
So one thing I can say related to this is that if we do go forward with having this, that we have to be very clear and deliberate on everything that we do and make sure that it is very plainly laid out. Some people I've talked to in the community, they've said, you heard different parts as the last referendum was coming up, that well, I heard that we were supposed to be getting this, but they never gave us this. Well, was it on the final part of the referendum? But they were like, well, these are the things that they were saying they were going to give us, but they never did. They only gave us these things. Well, we got to make sure that we go back and clarify, hey, like, this is what the original referendum was. Make sure that there was no misleading spots to it, so that our community can trust that we will be able to take that money and use it correctly. And then also with that plan saying, hey, this is what our plan is to do, and make sure it's very clearly laid out that these are the things that we're going to do with it. This is how they're going to go, and make sure there's just that no confusion side of it.
I hear you. Clarification. Gotcha. Board Member Miller?
I mean, no, I mean, I hate to not have anything meaningful to contribute, but I mean, I think that kind of covers it.
Okay. Well, we don't have to make the meeting longer. I just want to make sure that everyone has had a chance to say something, and, to make sure that I have, representative thinking as we go. So that's all.
No, I appreciate it. Yep.
All right. All right. Since you're not moving, Board Member Schneider, I'm assuming you feel the same then. Okay. All right. So now to 2E, budget development. In the budget development, you don't have to pull the screen up, Mrs. Shope, but I'll just draw attention to number 7, the slide. I think that's like our budget model forecast. So there's two things when we think about our budget development and where we're at in that process, is that Dr. Kieser did present the model staff compensation plan, and so that's going to come back on July 5th for us to take action in the committee meeting, and then from the committee meeting, it may end up at the full board for us to adopt. One of the things that I'm just pointing out is that along with that model, as it goes to steps and lanes and includes longevity, but that there is also and as you read the details of it, going down as we count years of experience, people gain 2% every year. And so along with that, as an example, from the conversation I had with Dr. Kieser, like if we were in a space that's different, like this year, CPI was 4.7, that you'd count the 2% that everyone already gets as they move down, and then it'd be 2.7 to the base. And that's what would create the basic CPI raise for people. And then that would cascade across all spaces. So we did make that investment to have this tool in place. But along with that tool, Evergreen Compensations is creating for us. There are also other recommendations that go along with that tool. So the tool is one part, but there are recommendations about how we as a district should be structured and staffed based on the personnel that we have and the responsibilities. One significant thing that was pointed out is like how we have our superintendent set up, that there's 19 direct reports to the superintendent, including like all the building principals. And boards prior to us created different structures, but this recommendation that is giving us this compensation model also is giving us some recommendations about how we should be staffed. And people will see the compensation model first, but what's going to follow will be with our new superintendent will be that examination of those recommendations from that plan so that we're properly structured, because that work has to be done. And in some ways, we're not having efficiencies, and it's making the work of others difficult because they have a lot to do. So that's an important part to remember as we approach that plan. And then also we have the Baird forecast model, which, I think Ms. LaPointe, Lisa from Baird Financial, and we also have, the name is passing me right now, but we are contracting with a retired school business manager who is assisting us with those um, uh, business operations functions to help us with our budget development. And that referendum planning kind of goes along with that budget development. And that's a part of also major work that happens during the summertime and leading up into the school year. And when we get to October, the finalization of our budget, and there'll be other numbers that the state will release as we go through the summer that'll put that picture together. And like I said, we, looking at that $10.5 million, and there's still ESSER funds and other things. That's kind of where we're at with the financial picture. Are there any comments or questions or concerns from other board members?
I cannot love enough that we're finally addressing longevity. It's like a broken record at this point. People have been asking for it forever, and with the teacher shortage that we're facing now and will continue to be facing, I don't see how we couldn't move forward with this with full understanding of our budget constraints. I mean, even when things are trim, you have to invest in what's going to grow in the future, and the best way to grow enrollment, I mean, kids and families form relationships with good teachers. We want to keep those good teachers, and I just think that this is a very smart move for us.
Okay. All right. So one thing I'd also list is, the summertime is also kind of like that revolving door in HR as teachers are coming and going. I think that, and within the profession, there are a lot of people that are examining their situations and making determinations about where they want to be and looking at the different types of commitments that school boards are making or organizations are making. I think, like you said, that this is something that our employee groups and employees across all groups have complained about our organization, that some things have not seemed to be fair. But this is a comprehensive approach to address all groups and to value them through compensation, as it is. So I think that this is an opportunity, like you said, to increase satisfaction and show appreciation and hopefully gain us ability and help us reach that goal that we've received in feedback that we should be recruiting and retaining high quality staff. And like I said, we're also experiencing inflation like none of us have probably experienced in our lifetime as it's going. And this is a little bit different than what was in the 70s. So we're still at some instability because of the global pandemic. And those ESSER funds are with us until 23, 24, as we're still trying to prudently use those. And who knows what like the next wave might be when we get into that cold and flu season. Things might change, and lots of things are still happening as we go forward. So that is where we're at with our budget development. If there's nothing else, we'll move to board development. Okay. So board development, there's two things. One, continuing our work with Drew in board development, and we're kind of at a transition that we'll be adding a new superintendent to our work, and that's an important part in our board development. But one of the things that I did is I looked at our survey results and where we had made significant improvement in our relationships. And I guess that's only to be assumed if 3 people quit and then 4 people get to pick the next 3 people to serve, that it'll probably be a little bit more, the water will be a little bit easier. But even though sometimes we vote unanimously, we don't all agree with each other on the issues, but the way that we handle those disagreements, we think is respectful and civil. We're focused on the work that we're trying to do. But that relationships is one area. Community leadership is another area. Policy, another area. Accountability, and vision, our other areas that are listed in our in equity are listed in that 5 key works of school boards. And so where we have achieved a good score in relationship, the other 4 are still areas that we have not reached a level of satisfaction that we're doing well in them. Like we have many scores that are positive. Our new board members, Anderson and Winfield, Brian, they will be participating in this in October. So again, as we kind of follow that along, to try to prepare them for that, and I just kind of went through some of the categories again, just to community leadership, to build public support to implement the school board's vision, through public advocacy, through community engagement, to share the school board's concerns and actions with the public. So as you have mentioned, some of these community sessions, these listening sessions, that is an active part of that. I need to make note of, there are some meetings. There's the Beloit Coalition of Churches is actively planning a back to school event and health fair, talk about community resources, and they've reached out to the district. The district participated in the Juneteenth celebrations with both organizations, the Elite Ladies and the Rising Queens. And then also there's been an invitation to myself and Megan from the Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation, Jen Hall and Mindy Kuntz. The Greater Beloit Economic Development Corporation community organization for our Forward NGL Academy program at our high school to discuss next steps and our involvement. So those are some areas where things are going to come up. Within policy, there are a couple things that we might need to review in policy as we receive from those results, because the policy is where we take our where our power as a board comes from, how the school board sustainably exercises power to serve students. Through policy, the school board addresses concerns. So, how we're using our power, the 7 of us together, to serve our students. Issues like retaining and attracting high quality staff, facilitating leadership succession in key administrative positions. That's the situation we're currently in right now. And, we have to examine, do we have policy to address that? Staff authority and responsibility, define policies to create and promote a safe learning and positive learning environment, appropriate interventions and consequences for all staff and students that don't meet expectations, having effective public input and the complaint resolution process, having a well-defined and well-communicated school safety and crisis response plan. Those are some of the things that we've already mentioned. And then in accountability, to articulate our high academic standards and progress towards reaching them through transparency and accountability, the open decision making that's based on data, showing that we're open to new ideas, that we're open to constructive criticism. We've received that data through the form of our surveys, but some of our academic data, we've discussed in the strategic planning that we don't have all those data structures in line so that we can point out to parents, this is where your student is at, and they are either at, above, or below the standard. But taking those actions on, envision, having a clear vision with high expectations for quality teaching and learning that supports strong student outcomes, and through clear and specific goals that we're moving the district forward. That's a space for us. And then in equity, provision of personalized resources needed for all students to reach common goals through matching supports to students' needs. That as we ground our work coming into this next school year, we'll have our strategic plan, we'll have our most recent feedback from our community, but we take this survey 2 times a year, and those are that's what grounds and shapes the categories that we'll be in. The pattern in the past had been to involve Drew in helping us to kind of get to one stage. So now our work with Drew, he's waiting for us to give him a call about when do we want him to come back, and what do we specifically want him to help us work towards. One of my first thoughts is just like, as we continue this community engagement, but this communication piece of how are we communicating with our public. But we'll have different needs. But in this space about board development, I would say, like, one, what is your thought about when to bring Drew back, and what other things to give Drew to help us focus to continue to improve our ability as a board?
I really like the idea of working with Drew on communication. I mean, like I really appreciate also just how you went through and kind of delineated kind of all of the work within those categories. And as you were going through there, I mean, the kind of the question that I had on my mind while I was listening was like, what is going to be the best bang for our buck for our board to work on while we're transitioning to new superintendent? One persistent issue that I think every district faces to some extent is communication. And I think that it would be of great value for our board to work with Drew to further develop ourselves and our mechanisms and style of communication, so that as we onboard a new superintendent, just like we're bringing in, we hope to bring our new superintendent into the work that we've already begun, we can kind of bring this new superintendent into a culture that we're continuing to create of like positive and effective communication.
Okay, got you down there.
For the side of like when did you bring Drew back in, I think the time to bring him back in would be like right after we take the survey and the results are available, because then it's going to reflect on what our current board needs to develop on also. So he can come in, say, hey, like these are your top 3 things that from the survey say that you need to work on. Well, let's start working on the one that's the biggest, like the top thing that we need to work on. So, and have him just kind of start shaping that growth to help improve that thing. Because then when we take the survey the next time, because it'll be with the same board members, we'll see if we actually achieved that growth in that spot.
Okay.
I agree that communication is one area we need to work on. I also think that with everything we have going on right now, with the superintendent search, with the consideration of a referendum, and so on, that this is the time that communication is really critical for the board. I think we should not wait until October, but that may be something that we really need to begin focusing on soon, to help us come up with that plan and to increase that communication, so that we can be really effective with our work.
Right, I hear that. Yeah, I'm more on the sooner rather than later part, and I think that for me, what I would say is board president. There's us respond. As we respond to collective emails, and I write the group responses, and then just handling the Frozen Principal incident, communicating that, and working with the Beloit Daily News, the reporter Sarah Myers, who covers the school district, handling the Dr. Kieser announcement to Stoughton as that story developed. Sometimes in the school district, as we're like with news, there's all this stuff may happen, and kind of with Dr. Kieser, as we worked with him, and he was also working with Stoughton, the process was there's nothing to communicate until there's something to communicate. So that's how we kind of handled that process. And then along with the Frozen Principal incident, kind of sometimes things on the ground take off faster than you can, but then you try to communicate through the medium that people do read the paper, and try to create a context for that. But like I said, we're all dealing with different facts at different times. So that comprehensive understanding of what's happening is not there. And then, like I said, we are in this process with these surveys, the superintendent. And then I think another part is, we also have our own communication staff, Mrs. Christopher in her office, to figure out between the superintendent and the board, what are the communication services and needs, because there's a time to get certain things out. There are some districts that, like, the district administrator communicates out directly after each school board meeting to the staff, to create an understanding of what actually took place in the meetings. And sometimes, if I'm thinking about the things that we have dealt with, because some people are watching the meetings and some people are at the meetings and some people are not, or some people are just waiting till they hear about it in the paper. And worse, some people's only information about the district is what they see posted on Facebook. Communication is a real opportunity for us if we can be consistent and reliable. That, I think we could build trust for the work that's happening. So I'm with, communication as a focus for our work with Drew, and then kind of sooner rather than later, but recognizing board member Anderson, that we're kind of in July trying to select the interim superintendent, around that August, September time, trying to select the long-term superintendent. And we kind of balance what we can do when, because we'll probably have a number of more closed session meetings after our regular open session meetings. So if we're going to drop Drew on our schedule for an hour, we got to make sure that the schedule is very light in front of it, so that it's not a burden on all of us. Because you can get developed and helped, but if you're tired, it's kind of all going nowhere. So I'll take that in mind, and then I'll reach back out to Drew. Any other questions or concerns or comments to add to board development? Okay. So hearing none, that is I think I got to find my agenda. That's the last item. Future meeting date 3A. Our future meeting date is Tuesday, July 26, 2022 at 6 p.m. Is there a motion for adjournment, item 3B?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by board member Megan Miller and seconded by board member Spencer Anderson. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the motion passes unanimously, and we are now adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, we're back on that track. We're moving. All right. All right, good night, everybody. Thank you. Hey, Michelle, I'll probably give you a call in the morning.